Buckle up, because this is the story of how my wife, Sarah, thought she had everything figured out, how she fooled me, how she laughed behind my back, how she played her little game. But what she never saw coming was me flipping the script. She had her fun. She had her secret. But I was watching, waiting, planning. And when the time was right, I burned everything she thought was hers to the ground. It all started with the house. Sarah and I had been married for 7 years. We were, by all appearances, a solid, loving couple. We weren't perfect, of course, who is? But we had something real. Or at least, I thought we did. We both had stable jobs. I worked in finance, she was in marketing. We weren't rolling in money, but we were comfortable, and we'd been saving up for our first home together. We talked about it for years. Our dream house, the place we'd grow old in, host family holidays, maybe even raise kids someday. I wanted something practical, something with a big yard and a home office. Sarah wanted something stylish, something modern but cozy, as she put it. We'd spent months searching, going to open houses on weekends, scrolling through endless listings at night. And then, one day, Sarah found the one. "This is it," she said, practically glowing as she showed me the listing on her laptop. "It's perfect." I had to admit, it was beautiful. Big windows, open floor plan, a backyard that stretched for miles. A little out of our price range, but manageable. And Sarah was obsessed. She dove into house hunting mode with a kind of passion I hadn't seen in years. But looking back, I see it now. That wasn't excitement. That was something else. Because right around the time we started looking for houses, Sarah changed. She was suddenly on her phone more than usual. She started dressing differently, wearing perfume more often, paying more attention to her hair and nails. At first, I brushed it off. She'd always been into fashion, and maybe the house search was making her feel like she needed to level up. But then there were the late-night calls. At first, she'd step into the other room to take them, claiming they were work-related. But work calls don't usually involve soft giggles and whispered, "You're so bad" responses. Then came the excuses. "I'm going to check out another house with Jason after work. Jason says he found a place I might love. I'll go see it first and let you know. Jason is showing me some new listings. You don't have to come if you're tired." Jason, our real estate agent. At first, I didn't think much of him. He was in his late 30s, clean-cut, the kind of guy who always had a too-perfect smile. Friendly, professional, maybe a little too slick, but whatever. He was just doing his job. Or so I thought. It wasn't until one night, a completely normal, unremarkable Tuesday, that everything changed. Sarah had left her phone on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. I wasn't the snooping type, but when her screen lit up, I glanced over. It was an instinct, a reflex. I wasn't expecting anything, but then I saw his name. "Jason, can't stop thinking about last night. You looked incredible. Can't wait to tour more places with you." Winking face. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My first reaction was denial. No way. There had to be some other explanation. Maybe it was an inside joke. Maybe I was misreading it. Maybe. But deep down, I knew. I stood there, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. In the distance, I could hear the shower still running, the sound of Sarah humming to herself, completely oblivious. I had two choices. I could march into that bathroom, confront her, scream, demand an explanation, cause a scene. Or I could play the long game. I could let her believe she had me wrapped around her finger. I could let her keep digging herself deeper and deeper into her lies. I could pretend, smile, nod, say, "I love you too, babe," all while laying the groundwork to destroy her. That night, I made my choice. I didn't sleep. I lay there next to her, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Every moment from the last few months suddenly clicked into place. The late nights, the whispered calls, the perfume. The way she'd been so invested in certain houses but brushed off the ones I liked. It had never been about the house. It had been about him. I turned my head and looked at her. She was sleeping peacefully, curled up under the blankets, completely unaware that everything had changed. The next morning, I kissed her on the cheek before I left for work, just like I always did. And that was the moment my plan began. She thought she was building a future with him. She had no idea she was helping me build her downfall. They say when something feels off, it usually is. I wasn't looking for proof that my wife was faithful. I was looking for proof that she wasn't. After seeing Jason's text pop up on Sarah's phone that night, I knew I couldn't just go on blind trust anymore. I needed to know for sure. Not assumptions, not gut feelings, hard, undeniable proof. If I confronted her too soon, she'd lie, twist the story, maybe even turn it around on me. No, I had to be smarter than that. I had to set a trap. I started small. I paid attention. Sarah had a routine. Most nights, she got home from work around 6:30, changed into comfortable clothes, and settled on the couch with her phone. Some nights, she cooked. Other nights, we ordered takeout. But I started noticing little changes. She was dressing up more, even on nights when she was supposedly just grabbing coffee with a friend. She started staying out later, taking longer to respond to texts, and her phone never left her side. Then there were the calls. I'd walk into a room, and she'd lower her voice or suddenly hang up. I'd ask who it was, and she'd say something casual like, "Oh, just work stuff," or "It's Ashley. She's having guy problems again." But here's the thing. Ashley was married. Happily. So either Ashley had suddenly developed a secret life of drama, or Sarah was lying to my face. I knew Sarah wasn't stupid. She had deleted the text from Jason, so I wouldn't find anything incriminating if I went through her phone again. But people always leave breadcrumbs. So the next day at work, I logged into our phone provider's website. Our account was under my name, so I had full access to call and text logs. I filtered the search to Jason's number. Hundreds of messages. At all hours of the day. Some at 7 a.m. before she even left for work. Some at 11 p.m. while I was in bed, thinking she was just scrolling through social media. The calls were just as bad. Quick ones during lunch breaks. Longer ones late at night when she thought I was asleep. And suddenly, everything started making sense. The next step was simple. Create an opportunity. So that night, while we were having dinner, I leaned back in my chair and sighed. Work is killing me. I might have to stay late for the next couple of weeks. Sarah didn't even blink. That sucks, she said, stabbing at her salad. At least you're getting good projects, though. She didn't ask if I was okay. Didn't even pretend to be disappointed. I nodded. Yeah, it's just temporary. She shrugged. Well, don't stress too much. I'll probably have a few late nights too. Jason keeps finding houses last minute, and you know how the market is right now. I sipped my drink to hide my smirk. She had no idea I was setting her up. She thought I'd be gone. She thought she had all the time in the world to do whatever she wanted. And that's exactly what I wanted her to think. The following evening, I told Sarah I was heading back to the office. I grabbed my briefcase, kissed her on the cheek, and walked out the door. But I didn't go to work. Instead, I parked a few blocks away, where I had a clear view of our house. And then I waited. For the first 30 minutes, nothing happened. I started second-guessing myself. Maybe she really was inside, watching TV. Maybe I was overthinking this. Then, at 8:15 p.m., the porch light flickered on. And there she was. Sarah walked out, dressed up, hair done, wearing heels. This wasn't a casual coffee date. This wasn't a last-minute house tour. She wasn't going to work late. She was going to see him. I watched as she got into her car and pulled away. I let her get a few blocks ahead, then started following her. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I took slow, measured breaths. Because I knew, tonight, I would get the truth. There are moments in life when everything shifts, when the reality you thought you knew gets ripped apart, leaving you staring at the truth like a car crash you can't look away from. This was one of those nights. I had already pieced together enough clues to know Sarah was up to something. The deleted messages, the strange phone calls, the location history that placed her at a hotel instead of a house she was supposedly touring. I had even followed her once, watching her slip into a dimly lit parking lot before disappearing inside. That should have been enough. But I needed to see it. I needed to be there when she thought she was untouchable, when she thought I was far away, working late like the perfect, oblivious husband. So, when she casually mentioned over dinner that Jason had found a must-see listing and wanted to show it to her privately that night, I didn't even blink. "Oh yeah?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Where's the house?" She hesitated. just for a second, but I caught it. It's across town. Kind of far, but Jason says it's worth checking out. He thinks it could be the one. The one. I nodded, pretending to consider it. You want me to come with you? She laughed, brushing a hand over mine. No need, babe. You're swamped with work. Besides, I don't want you wasting your time on something that might not even be a contender. I smiled, said all the right things, told her to take her time. Then I watched as she grabbed her purse, kissed me on the cheek, and walked out the door. The moment her car was out of sight, I grabbed my keys. It was time. I had already memorized her usual route, so I knew exactly where she was headed. I hung back just far enough to avoid suspicion, watching as she drove past the suburban neighborhoods and into the city. 15 minutes later, my gut twisted as she turned down the familiar road, one that led nowhere near any available houses for sale. And then, just like last time, she pulled into the parking lot of the same hotel. I parked across the street, killing my headlights. My hands were steady, my breathing calm. If I was feeling anything, rage, hurt, the crushing weight of betrayal, it would have to wait. Right now, I needed to focus. Sarah's car idled for a moment before she got out, dressed too nicely for a casual property tour. She glanced around quickly before hurrying toward the side entrance, the one tucked away from the main road. Not the front lobby, not the main entrance, the back. That told me everything I needed to know. I snapped a picture of her just before she disappeared inside. And then I waited. I checked the time. 8:42 p.m. I leaned back in my seat, eyes locked on the entrance. I had expected this, had already braced myself for it. But that didn't stop the creeping sickness in my stomach as the minutes crawled by. She was inside, waiting for him. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I had spent years believing we were building something together. And yet, here I was, sitting in a dark car, watching my wife vanish into a hotel like a bad movie cliché. 8:53 p.m. Still no sign of him. 9:04 p.m. A black sedan pulled into the lot. It didn't park near the lobby. No, it pulled around the back, just like Sarah had. I didn't need to see the driver's face to know who it was. Jason. His car barely came to a stop before he climbed out, looking way too comfortable as he adjusted his jacket and headed inside. I grabbed my phone and took another picture. Clear, undeniable. I could have left right then. I had my proof. I had everything I needed to end this. But I didn't leave. I wanted to sit in that car, staring at the hotel like I could burn it down with my mind. I wanted to march inside, grab him by the collar, and drag him out into the parking lot. But I wouldn't give either of them the satisfaction of knowing I had lost control. Because the truth was, I wasn't broken. I was calculating. I took a deep breath, my fingers loosening around the steering wheel. This wasn't just an affair. This was a betrayal of everything we had built. Every inside joke, every whispered plan for the future, every holiday, every night spent talking about our dream home. She had already replaced me, and she thought I had no idea. I stayed for another 20 minutes, just long enough to be absolutely sure Jason wasn't there for some business meeting. Not that I needed more proof. And then I drove home. I expected to feel something, anger, pain, maybe even regret. But instead, I felt calm. Because this wasn't just some mistake. This wasn't some meaningless fling. This was war. And Sarah had no idea she had already lost. When I walked back into the house that night, nothing felt real. The air smelled the same, like the lavender candle Sarah liked to burn in the evenings. The furniture was in the same place, the same framed photos on the walls, the same neatly arranged throw pillows on the couch. Everything was just as I had left it. And yet, everything had changed. Sarah was already home, curled up on the sofa, scrolling through her phone like she had just finished some exhausting errand instead of coming back from a hotel with Jason. She glanced up at me and smiled. "Hey, you're home early." Her voice was light, casual, as if I wasn't standing there, staring at her, knowing exactly where she had been an hour ago. I forced a chuckle. Yeah, the client canceled last minute. Thought I'd just come home and relax. She stretched her arms above her head, letting out a dramatic yawn. Good. We can watch something together. I smiled, pretended, because Sarah was about to lose everything. She just didn't know it yet. For the next few weeks, I became the perfect husband. I kissed her goodbye in the mornings, texted her little things throughout the day, even brought home flowers one random evening, just because. I played along with every conversation, every fake smile she gave me, every little act of affection she threw my way to keep up the illusion of our marriage. She had no idea I was watching her every move, and she never questioned why I suddenly seemed more invested in the house hunting process. Because that was her weakness. The house. She was obsessed with it. The idea of building something new, designing it from the ground up, her dream home. It had been all she could talk about for months, and now that she thought she had me completely fooled, she dove into it head first. I let her. I encouraged her. "Babe, I want you to pick everything," I told her one night over dinner. "You have such a great eye for this stuff. I trust your taste." She lit up, and that's when I knew I had her. Over the next few weeks, Sarah took full control of the house buying process. She met with Jason constantly, poring over listings, setting up private tours, and texting him nonstop. I let her think I was too busy with work to be involved, too trusting to question anything. I acted like the clueless husband, letting his wife take charge of their future. What she didn't know was that I had already met with a lawyer. I had already ensured that when we closed on a house, her name would be nowhere on the paperwork. Every meeting with the mortgage broker, every signature, every financial document, mine alone. Sarah was designing a home she would never live in, and she was too busy sneaking around with Jason to notice. One evening, while Sarah was on the phone, I casually leaned against the kitchen counter, listening. "Jason," I could tell by the way her voice softened, the way she laughed a little too much, the way she played with the hem of her sweater while she spoke. I walked up behind her and kissed the top of her head. "Who's that?" She barely hesitated. "Oh, just Jason. He found another house he thinks we should see." I kept my face neutral. "Tonight?" "Yeah," she said, turning to smile at me. "He says it's a really great deal. I'll just check it out real quick and be home before 10. I held her gaze for a second, then nodded. "Sounds good. Let me know how it goes." She kissed my cheek, completely unaware that I already knew exactly where she was going. That night, I didn't even follow her. I didn't have to. Instead, I stayed home, poured myself a drink, and started going through the paperwork for the house that would be mine and mine alone. Sarah was too distracted to notice anything unusual. She thought she was winning. She thought she was manipulating me, that she was being so smart, so careful. But she had no idea that every move she made was playing right into my hands. She didn't question why I never pushed back when she changed house listings at the last minute. She didn't find it odd that I let her pick out everything. The colors, the flooring, the furniture, without much input from me. She didn't even blink when I handed over bank statements and tax documents for the mortgage process without asking her for any of hers. Because Sarah thought she was building a future with Jason. What she didn't realize was that she was helping me build her downfall. And by the time she figured it out, it would be too late. Some people, when they find out their spouse is cheating, lose their minds. They flip tables, break things, scream, confront, demand answers. I didn't. Because I wasn't just looking for a fight. I was looking for an ending. I already knew Sarah was betraying me. I had seen her leave. I had followed her. I had watched her meet Jason at that hotel. But knowing wasn't enough. If I wanted to destroy her, I needed proof. The kind of evidence that left no room for excuses, no chance for lies, no way out. The kind of proof that would make sure, when I was done with her, she would have nothing left. So, I hired a professional. And that's when everything changed. I wasn't about to go searching for some sketchy guy off the internet. I needed someone discreet, someone experienced, someone who had done this before. So, I did what any smart man would do. I reached out to a lawyer friend of mine. Tom wasn't a divorce lawyer, but he knew people. He had seen cases like this before, men who had walked into his office blindsided by betrayal, looking for a way to get out without losing everything. When I called him, I didn't sugarcoat it. "I need a private investigator," I said. "Someone good." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, he sighed. "Sarah?" "Yeah. Damn." Another pause. "I'll text you a number. Guy's name is Mark. He's handled cases like this before. He'll get you what you need." 2 days later, I sat across from Mark in a small diner on the other side of town. He was in his late 50s, the kind of guy who had seen it all. He had a no-nonsense air about him, dressed in a simple button-up, a leather notebook sitting in front of him. I laid it all out. I told him about the deleted messages, the late-night calls, the hotel meetings. I showed him the pictures I had already taken, the phone records I had pulled, the little details I had been gathering on my own. Mark listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally as he jotted down notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and studied me for a long moment. "You've already done half my job," he said finally. "I need more," I told him. "I need everything." He nodded. "All right. Here's how this works. I'll tail her, document where she goes, who she meets. I'll get photos, videos, timestamps, receipts. If there's something to find, I'll find it." I already knew there was something to find. I just wanted every last detail. Mark wasted no time. The very next day, I gave him Sarah's work schedule, her usual routines, the places she liked to go. And then, I stepped back. I didn't follow her anymore. I didn't track her phone. I let him do what he did best. And soon, the evidence started piling up. Photos of Sarah and Jason having coffee dates in the middle of the day, when she was supposedly too busy with work. Timestamps of late-night meetups at that same hotel. Camera footage of Jason letting her into his apartment. Receipts. Actual, physical receipts. For expensive dinners, charges made to her card on nights she told me she was out with friends. And the best part? Jason was married. Oh, that was a fun discovery. Turned out, Jason wasn't just helping couples find homes. He was tearing them apart. His wife, Amanda, had no idea what was happening. But she would soon. Because if I was going down this road, I wasn't going alone. Mark wasn't cheap, but he was worth every penny. Within 2 weeks, I had a full dossier, photos, video clips, documents, statements. Enough to bury Sarah in any courtroom, in any divorce case, in any public setting where she might try to lie her way out of this. I kept it all in a locked drawer in my office. Every night, after Sarah came home, kissed me hello, and lied straight to my face, I'd take out the folder and flip through the pages, reminding myself why I wasn't confronting her yet. Because the time wasn't right. Not yet. I wasn't just going to leave her. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to make sure she lost everything. And when I was done, she wouldn't even see it coming. They say knowledge is power. I had all the knowledge now, and that meant I had all the power. The evidence Mark had gathered wasn't just convincing. It was airtight. I had photographic proof of Sarah meeting Jason at hotels, slipping into his apartment, and lying to my face every step of the way. I had phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts, right down to the minute, documenting their little secret world. I had bank statements proving she had been using our joint account to fund her affair, expensive dinners, gas station stops near Jason's place, little shopping sprees she must have justified as retail therapy. I even had proof that Jason was just as much of a liar as she was. A married man who had built a career on trust while betraying his own wife behind closed doors. This wasn't just evidence. This was a loaded weapon, and I was about to pull the trigger. The next step was making sure Sarah walked away with nothing. That's where my lawyer came in. I had already contacted him after my first meeting with Mark. At the time, I didn't have all the proof, but I had enough to lay the groundwork. Now I had everything. When I walked into his office and placed the folder of evidence on his desk, he raised an eyebrow. "You've been busy," he said. "You have no idea." He opened the file, flipping through the pages slowly, nodding as he scanned the reports. The further he got, the more impressed he looked. Finally, he closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. "This is open and shut." That's what I was hoping to hear. "You're filing for divorce?" "Not yet." I smirked. "I'm going to wait until it hurts the most." He let out a small chuckle. "All right. What do you want to happen?" "2 things," I said, leaning forward. "First, I don't want her getting a single cent from me. No alimony, no share of the house, nothing." He nodded. "With this evidence, that won't be a problem." "Second," I exhaled, feeling the weight of what I was about to say, "I want her dream to collapse right in front of her. Because while Sarah had been sneaking around with Jason, I had been playing my own game. She thought she was building her perfect life with her perfect home, believing I was oblivious. She thought she had one, but she had no idea the house was never hers. Over the next few weeks, Sarah continued living in her little delusion. She kept up the act, smiling at me over breakfast, sending me texts about house listings, calling Jason when she thought I wasn't paying attention. She had no idea what was coming. Every night, she would show me paint swatches and furniture ideas, asking me what I thought about different styles. She was already mentally decorating, imagining where she and Jason would be sitting, sleeping, living. I gave her exactly what she wanted to hear. I love that one. That would look great in the dining room. Yeah, we should definitely go with that color. She thought she was winning, but I already had the house deed in my name. I had already filed every document ensuring she had no claim to it. And she was designing a future that didn't include her. My lawyer set everything into motion. The divorce papers were drawn up, citing adultery as the reason. With the evidence attached, there was no way she could fight it. No way she could demand anything in court. She had no leverage. I also made sure the real estate agent's ethics board received an anonymous tip about Jason's affair with a client, something that could easily cost him his license. I was about to rip their perfect little fantasy apart, and they had no idea. I wanted to make sure Sarah was completely blindsided. So, I played one last trick. One evening, while she was drinking wine and flipping through home decor magazines, I sat down next to her. "This house is going to be perfect," I said, acting like a doting husband. "I can't wait to start fresh." She smiled, looking so damn smug. "Me too." I kissed her temple, pretending. "I love you, Sarah." She actually had the nerve to smile back and say, "I love you too." The words felt hollow, fake, worthless, but I didn't care. Because in just a few days, her whole world was about to fall apart, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. Some moments in life hit like a truck, sudden, unstoppable, and devastating. Sarah was about to experience one of those moments. She thought today was the beginning of her new life, a fresh start in the dream home she had spent months obsessing over, decorating in her mind, imagining herself and Jason living in once she finally moved on from me. She had no idea she was about to lose everything, and I made sure she would never forget it. That morning, Sarah was practically buzzing with excitement. She was up early, already dressed, her hair styled, her nails freshly done. She had been talking about today all week, reminding me over and over again how important it was that everything went smoothly. She had no idea how far from smooth things were about to get. "Are you sure you don't want to be there when the movers start unloading?" she asked as she checked herself in the mirror. I smiled, played my part. "Nah, I trust you," I said casually, sipping my coffee. "Besides, you're better at handling these things." She beamed. "True. You just get in the way." That was probably the most honest thing she'd said in months. I watched as she grabbed her bag, her keys, then leaned in and kissed my cheek. "I'll call you once we start getting things set up." I nodded, looking forward to it. And with that, she walked out the door, completely oblivious to the absolute nightmare waiting for her. Sarah pulled up to the house about 20 minutes later, Jason right behind her. I wish I could have seen her face the moment she saw it. The for sale sign planted in the front yard, the movers not unloading, but rather hauling her things away. I imagine the excitement drained from her expression instantly, replaced by sheer confusion. Because this wasn't what was supposed to happen. The house was supposed to be hers. But today, Sarah was about to learn a very valuable lesson. Nothing was ever hers. I pulled up a few minutes later, stepping out of my car just in time to watch the scene unfold. Sarah was already out of her vehicle, standing frozen in the driveway, staring at the movers as they carried boxes. Her boxes, back into the truck. Jason stood beside her, looking equally lost. "What the hell is going on?" Sarah's voice finally cracked through the morning air, her panic rising. The movers ignored her, sticking to their job. That's when I stepped forward, casual as ever. Hands in my pockets, divorce papers tucked neatly under my arm. Sarah turned sharply at the sound of my footsteps. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time in months, I saw fear. "Ethan," she stammered. What is this?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I took a long, slow look around. The beautiful house she thought she would own. The moving truck carrying away all her things. Jason, standing awkwardly beside her, realizing that something had gone very, very wrong. Then, I finally met her gaze. This, I said smoothly, this is what happens when you mistake a fantasy for reality. Her brows furrowed, confusion mixing with frustration. What are you talking about? The movers. Why are they taking my stuff? I chuckled. God, this was satisfying. Your stuff? I repeated, tilting my head. Sarah, this was never your house. I let the words sink in. She blinked rapidly, like she was trying to process something impossible. But we bought it together, she blurted. The mortgage, the paperwork. I cut her off with a smirk. You mean my mortgage? My paperwork? That's when I pulled out the documents, the ones with my name and my name alone on every single line. I held them up, flipping through the pages dramatically before handing them to her. Go ahead, I said. Take a look. Let me know if you find your name anywhere on that deed. She snatched the papers from my hand, scanning them furiously. Her face paled. Her hands started shaking. And then, reality hit her like a freight train. She looked up at me, eyes wide. No, this has to be a mistake. No, Sarah, I said, my voice calm but firm. The mistake was thinking you could betray me and still walk away with everything. That's when Jason, poor, clueless Jason, finally decided to speak. Wait, he said, stepping closer. What the hell is going on here? I turned to him, giving him the same cold smile. Well, Jason, I said, I'd say welcome to the party, but I think you're about to wish you were anywhere else. Sarah was spiraling now, her breathing uneven. She flipped through the paperwork again, desperately searching for something, anything, that would tell her this wasn't happening. But it was. Jason stepped forward, rubbing the back of his neck. Sarah, what is he talking about? She turned to him like he was a lifeline. I don't know. Ethan, please, let's just talk about this. Talk about what? I asked. The affair you thought I didn't know about? Jason froze. Sarah's entire body tensed. And for the first time, I saw genuine panic in her eyes. Ethan, I pulled out the second folder of documents, the one containing photos, receipts, call logs. Don't, I cut her off. We're past the part where you get to lie. This? I held up the folder. This is every single piece of proof I've gathered over the last few months. The hotel meetups, the late-night calls, the money you spent on him from our account. Jason took a step back, his face twisting in horror. Wait, what? His voice was tight. You used his money? I smirked. Oh yeah, Jason. Hope you enjoyed all those fancy dinners she bought you. Because guess what? I leaned in slightly. You were eating on my dime. Sarah turned to Jason, shaking her head rapidly. No, Jason, it's not like that. Not like what? Jason's expression darkened. You told me you were leaving him. You told me the house was yours. Yeah, about that, I said, crossing my arms. Turns out she's just as much of a liar to you as she was to me. Jason looked between us, realization sinking in. And then, without another word, he walked away. Sarah called after him, her voice cracking, but he didn't turn back. And just like that, her perfect new life fell apart. I turned back to Sarah, who was completely crumbling. She was still holding the divorce papers, her fingers gripping them so tight they crumpled. You played the game, Sarah, I said, my voice steady. You just didn't realize I was always 10 steps ahead. She didn't respond. She couldn't. Because for the first time, she finally understood. She had lost. Sarah stood frozen, clutching the crumpled divorce papers in her trembling hands. The realization had finally sunk in. She had lost. Jason had stormed off, leaving her standing in the driveway of a house she thought was hers. A house that was never hers. The moving truck, which was supposed to be unloading her things, was now carrying them away. She looked at me, eyes wild with desperation. Ethan, please, she whispered. We can fix this. I let out a slow chuckle. Fix this? There was no fixing this. You don't get it, do you? I said, my voice steady. You're done, Sarah. You lost. And I wasn't just talking about the house. I was about to make sure she lost everything. Sarah was scrambling now, trying to think of a way out. She looked at the divorce papers again, flipping through them like she would somehow find a loophole, a saving grace that didn't exist. "No, this isn't right," she mumbled. We, she swallowed hard. "We built this together." I crossed my arms. "No, Sarah. I built this. You just thought you were stealing it." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No regret. She had made her choices. And now? She was going to face the consequences. I pulled out my phone. With a few taps, I sent out 3 messages, the final nails in her coffin. The first message went to our closest friends and family. I had already drafted it. I had been waiting for this moment. "Hey everyone. I just wanted to be upfront about what's happening before Sarah tries to twist the story. We're getting divorced because she's been having an affair for months with our real estate agent, Jason. I have proof. If you need any details, feel free to ask. But as of today, she's out of my life." I hit send. Sarah's phone buzzed a second later. She grabbed it, read the message, and her face went white. "Ethan," she choked out, looking up at me with wide eyes. "You didn't." "Oh, I did," I said with a smirk. "And trust me, that was the gentle version." She fumbled with her phone, probably trying to do damage control, but the damage was already done. Within seconds, my phone started lighting up with responses. From her sister, "What? Sarah, is this true?" From one of her friends, "Holy crap. I can't believe this. I'm so sorry, Ethan." From her boss, "Ethan, can we talk?" I smiled at that last one, because that was the second bomb. Sarah worked in marketing, and her company had a strict ethics policy. Affairs might not be illegal, but when they involve business relationships, especially with a real estate agent who worked with her company, things got messy. So, I had sent a little email to her HR department. Attached were screenshots of her texts with Jason, timestamps of their late-night calls, and expense reports showing how she had been misusing the company account for client meetings that were actually just fancy dates with Jason. It was enough to wreck her professionally. Her phone rang. She stared at the screen, her lips trembling. Her boss. She didn't answer. She knew. Her entire career was about to go up in flames. But I wasn't done. Jason had gotten away too easily. So, I made sure he burned with her. Remember when I found out Jason was married? I had one last message to send. To his wife, Amanda. I kept it simple. "Hey Amanda, I think you deserve to know what your husband has been doing." Attached are messages and photos of Jason and my soon-to-be ex-wife, Sarah. I'd suggest speaking to a lawyer. Then, I attached everything. All of it. And I hit send. Sarah saw me do it. Her breath hitched. "Ethan." "Oh, don't worry," I said, slipping my phone back into my pocket. Jason's about to have a real fun conversation at home. Sarah's world was shattering in real time. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from friends, family, coworkers. Some furious, some shocked, some just watching the train wreck unfold. She had nowhere to run. Her job? Gone. Her reputation? Destroyed. Her dream house? Never hers. Jason? About to lose everything too. And me? I was free. I turned to the movers, who had finished loading up the truck. "Make sure everything goes to the storage unit. The numbers on the paperwork." They nodded and drove off, taking Sarah's life with them. She was left standing in an empty driveway, shaking, broken, and completely alone. Sarah turned back to me, tears streaming down her face. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. There was nothing left to say. She had spent months lying, sneaking around, planning a future without me. Now, she had nothing. I stepped closer, looking her dead in the eyes. "You thought you were playing a game, Sarah," I said quietly. "But the problem is, you never realized I was playing too." I let those words sink in. Then, without another glance back, I walked to my car, got in, and drove away, leaving her in the ruins of the life she destroyed herself. Share your thoughts in the comments. What was your favorite part of Ethan's revenge? The house trap? The exposure? The job takedown? If you like this story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.